Hello everyone, this is Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and we're into March now. We've got all sorts of exciting reading events going on BookTube with Mars. We have the great Barsoom novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs, the first start of Marsathon with Princess of Mars. And then we've got March Mystery Madness going on, so I grabbed Raymond Chandler's Simple Art of Murder. And I was thinking, you've got these two great events going on, and you've got this sort of Venn diagram. And if we get to that Venn diagram, maybe the intersection would be the Martian Chronicles of Ray Bradbury. So I want to do a quick story time where I review a short story of Bradbury's. And I think his Martian Chronicles have a couple of stories that, while they're very much science fiction stories, Ray Bradbury, of course, famously wrote Fahrenheit 451, he has science fiction stories that have this twist to them. And especially within the Martian Chronicles, you have these science fiction stories that have a layer of suspense or a layer of dread, and this deep, they're steeped in atmosphere, like so many of the best mystery stories and novels are. And so with it being Mars, I thought, let's dig into the Martian Chronicles. Now, one of the top stories is usually the third expedition story. Some people, that one was in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1, where it collects a bunch of stories that predate the Nebula Awards that were regarded as top stories. And that was one of them. But I think the one that really has a nice level of suspense is actually, it's the second story in the Martian Chronicles, Ylla. But it really, the first story is just this rocket somewhere where this vignette where it talks about, how excited everybody is to travel in space. So Ylla starts out like this. They had a house of crystal pillars on the planet Mars by the edge of an empty sea, and every morning you could see Mrs. K eating the golden fruits that grew from the crystal walls, or cleaning the house with handfuls of magnetic dust, which, taking all dirt with it, blew away on the hot wind. Afternoons, when the fossil sea was warm and motionless, and the wine trees stood stiff in the yard, and the little distant Martian bone town was all enclosed, and no one drifted out their doors, you could see Mr. K himself in his room, reading from a metal book with raised hieroglyphs, on which he brushed his hand as one might play a harp. And from that book, as his fingers stroked, a voice sang, a soft, ancient voice, which told tales of when the sea was red steam on the shore, and ancient men had carried clouds of metal insects and electric spiders into battle. Mr. and Mrs. K had lived by the Dead Sea for 20 years, and their ancestors had lived in the same house, which turned and followed the sun, flower-like, for 10 centuries. Mr. and Mrs. K were not old. They had the fair, brownish skin of the true Martian, the yellow coin eyes, the soft, musical voices. Once they had liked painting pictures with chemical fire, swimming in the canals in the seasons when the wine trees filled them with green liquors, and talking into the dawn together by the blue phosphorus portraits in the speaking room. They were not happy now. I mean, what an incredible start to a story. We're just imbued with the atmosphere. I really particularly love this volume where you see the red Mars with this blue river and these humanoid beings, and then on the back. And part of what's so evocative about the Martian Chronicles of Ray Bradbury, and that story Ylla captures it so well at the beginning, is how he evokes that sort of rugged, mysterious desert landscape that's common to the Southwest in the United States of America, where there's this sense of space, of this craggy grandeur, where there's an endless vista, but there's also all of these rocks that they cast shadows, or they curve, and so there's a cleft within the rock, and there might be something alive in there, something waiting in that cleft to be discovered. And that's really the atmosphere we're given in throughout the Martian Chronicles, but within that story, Ylla. And we're then taken into the mind of that. Ylla is the main character's name, and so we're taken into her mind where she has these dreams and starts wondering, is it possible if there are people who live on the third planet, and they, in her dream, this person, this man, calls it Earth, and he looks so different from the Martian characters. He's too tall. His hair color, his eye color are different. His skin color is different. and yet she's so interested in it. And so we see the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. K, and it's a fascinating relationship. It's a very short, like just over 10, I think it's about 14 pages as a story. Um, but we get this fascinating relationship, and we have this mystery and suspense around her dreams. Who is this person she's dreaming of? And we see the tension ratcheting up between Mr. and Mrs. K, but also around why is she having these dreams? And I'm not going to spoil it, but I just wanted to say, if you've never read Bradbury, the Martian Chronicles are a great quick read, in part because although all of the stories are really connected and stitched together, many of them stand on their own as excellent little stories and gems. And in part because the landscape is just so fascinating, it's truly otherworldly. And so those are the Martian Chronicles of Ray Bradbury. The first story, Ylla, is a wonderful sort of suspenseful, mysterious story where we're never quite sure what's going to happen, and we get this building tension and indeed a building dread. A number of the stories have this sense of, something's going to happen, and it may not be something good that happens, and you're not quite sure what it's going to be, but it just builds up to that. And in a very wonderful way, in a way that I think the stories of Anton Chekhov serve as a model for Bradbury in some ways. And we, of course, have things like, I don't know if Mr. and Mrs. K, if that's a reference to some of the works of Kafka, like The Castle. It very well could be. I have no evidence for that. But if you're looking, if you've seen there's Marsathon going on and there's March Mystery Madness going on, and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? Well, just grab Ray Bradbury and get the best of both worlds. Obviously, his Martian Chronicles are very different from Barsoom, but they're very much set in the vein of the what was called Old Mars, when in the eras before NASA's spacecraft had gone, or probes had gone to Mars and discovered that there was no sentient life on Mars. We wondered, are there these ancient civilizations in these canals, and what could be there in this desert grandeur? What might exist? And Bradbury very much gives us a beautiful civilization that has reached its final days, and it's quite a delight. So I'll be back soon. I'm over 100 pages through Joseph and His Brothers with Stories of Jacob for Marching Mammoths. I'm not forgetting that. I just wanted to throw this up quickly. So thank you, everyone. Bye.